All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to continue on the Xanathar Sorcerer spiel we started last week. I think time is difficult when you record these significantly earlier. Um, yeah, we're going to continue with the Xanathar sorcerer subclasses with the Shadow Magic subclass. As always, we're going to start this off with a very brief review of 5th edition class design. In 5th edition, every single class is designed to play very, very differently right from the beginning. So in order for that to happen, they have these things that we call defining features. And in order for it to be a defining feature, it needs to show up within the first 2 levels. The Sorcerer, their main defining feature, obviously they get spellcasting because they're a spellcasting class, and their Sorceress Origin, their subclass they choose at level 1, so that's kind of a defining feature. However, their big defining feature is Font of Magic. They get it at level 2, and it gives them sorcery points that they can use for a lot of different things. At level 2, the only thing they can use it for is what's called flexible casting. Basically, they can change spell slots into sorcery points, and they can change sorcery points into spell slots, effectively giving them the ability to change higher level spell slots into lower level spell slots, and lower level spell slots, multiple lower level spell slots into higher level spell slots. And they can do this all the way up to level 5 spells. As they get to 3rd level, they get the ability to use their sorcery points for meta magic, which allows them to modify spells as they cast them. Sometimes they can make them cost a bonus action instead of an action, or they might be able to make all the enemies have disadvantage on their saving throws, or a number of different things. They're very, very interesting, very, very unique, and they make the Sorcerer a very adaptable class on the fly. They don't need to be like a cleric that is very adaptable at the beginning of the day by choosing the correct spells. No, right in the middle of combat, they can just change the things up and modify spells in order to get the exact thing that they were looking for. So, with that said, let's dive into Shadow Magic. Now, the last episode we did, we talked about the Divine Soul, which is basically a divine version of the cleric. The Shadow Magic would kind of sound like it's the opposite, but it isn't, because the Divine Soul could have either celestial blood or fiendish blood. So you actually got kind of both sides of this. Shadow Magic is a whole different thing in itself. They draw their power from the Shadowfell, which is a plane of existence that sits just under the prime material plane, whereas the Feywild sits just over. And while the Feywild is infused with kind of arcane energy and magic, the Shadowfell is infused with shadow and the darkness and coldness. So that's where they draw their power from, and it can be pretty cool. Let's go ahead and dive into the actual subclass features. At first level, you get 2 different things. The first thing you get is called Eyes of the Dark. Starting at first level, you have dark vision with a range of 120 feet. That alone is kind of unique. Most races that have dark vision have it up to 60 feet. I believe Dark Elves get the extended dark vision of up to 120 feet. So this effectively gives you the best racial dark vision in the game, just as a part of this. But that's not the only thing. When you reach 3rd level in this class, you learn the Darkness spell, which doesn't count against your number of sorcery spells known. In addition, you can cast it by spending 2 sorcery points or by expending a spell slot. If you cast it with sorcery points, you can see through the darkness created by the spell. That is a really massive deal, specifically because of a thing that I used to just call the monk lock. In the Adventures League in its early years, a very, very common multi-class to find was a monk that would take a Way of the Shadow monk that would take 2 levels in Warlock to get the Eldritch Invocation that allowed them to see in magical darkness. The reason they would do that is Shadow monks get the ability to cast darkness using key points. And so what would happen is darkness is actually cast on an object. It's not cast on an area like silence is. So what they would do is they would cast it on a pebble or a dagger or something that they could hold. And what they would do is, as long as they didn't completely surround it, so there was some gaps for the darkness to spread out, they would basically have mobile cover. Because unless you have true sight, you can't see in magical darkness, even if you have the dark vision. With Eyes of the Dark, this sorcerer can effectively do the same thing without needing a multi-class, which gives them, again, mobile cover effectively, because darkness will cut off line of sight. It gives you advantage against any creature that can't see. If you can, you have advantage on any attack rolls against them. Any creature trying to attack you, if they know where you are, will have disadvantage on their attack rolls against you because they can't see you. And again, and if anything requires you to have line of sight to your target, they're not going to be able to do it because you have this traveling to the darkness. It means this particular sorcerer can be a melee style sorcerer pretty easily. I mentioned in the last video, there's a spell, I believe it showed up in Xanathar's, called Shadow Blade, where what it is you actually conjure a shadow sword, and it does a remarkable amount of damage. And if you cast it at higher levels, the damage just gets higher and higher. But you use your spellcasting modifier for attack and damage rolls. So you basically have a magic sword that you don't need a dexterity or a strength score to be able to wield. And if you use this Eyes of the Dark, you can just run up to enemies and kill them using this sword. And you don't need to use any spell slots to do it. You can just use sorcery points. And the interesting thing about it, sorcery points, darkness is a second level spell. In order to make a second level spell slot, you need to spend 3 sorcery points. In order to cast the darkness spell using Eyes of the Dark, you only use 2. So you theoretically could sacrifice a first level spell slot and use it to cast Eyes of the Dark, effectively turning a first level spell slot into a second level with no penalties. So really interesting, really fun. The second thing you get at first level is called Strength of the Grave. When damage reduces you to 0 hit points, you can make a charisma saving throw, DC 5 plus the damage taken. On a success, you instead drop to 1 hit point. You can't use this feature if you are reduced to 0 hit points by radiant damage or by critical hits. And after the saving throw succeeds, you can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. So this one is really interesting for a number of reasons, mostly because of the last line. I've mentioned before, I'm not a huge fan of one and done long rest abilities because players won't use them because they're worried if they use it now, they won't be able to use it when they really need it. But the thing about this is, after the saving throw succeeds, so until it's actually useful, you can keep using it. So if you get hit by a large enough attack where there's very little chance that you're going to be able to make your save, there's really no reason not to use this Strength of the Grave, because if you fail, you get to use it again. You get to keep using it until you can't. Until you succeed, you can keep trying. which is really interesting. And again, it's one of the things Xanathar does so well with one and done abilities, is it makes them useful enough that it's worth using that one uses of it. And again, this is a lot of sorcerers are going to do their best to stay out of danger. They're going to use a lot of ranged spells. With the fact, with the Eyes of the Dark, giving you basically mobile cover, and Strength of the Grave basically allowing you to survive normally lethal attacks, you can create a very aggressive melee style sorcerer out of this build, which again is really unique. You generally don't have melee sorcerers. So yeah, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. At 6th level, you get Hound of Ill Omen. As a bonus action, you can spend 3 sorcery points to magically summon a Hound of Ill Omen to target one creature you can see within 120 feet of you. The Hound uses the Direwolf's statistics. If you're not familiar with the Direwolf, it's a challenge rating 1 creature. Basically, AC 14, hit points 37, speed of 50 feet. And it has pack tactics, which is really useful. Basically, the wolf has advantage on all attack rolls against a creature if at least one of the wolf's allies is within 5 feet of the creature and the ally isn't incapacitated. So again, talking about that melee cleric, or not cleric, melee sorcerer, now with the direwolf, if you're both there, you can go pretty far. So the Hound uses the direwolf statistics with the following changes. So it's not exactly that. The Hound size is medium, not large, and it counts as a monstrosity, not a beast. It appears with a number of temporary hit points equal to half your sorcerer level, so even harder to kick a kill. It can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult to terrain. The Hound takes 5 force damage if it ends its turn inside an object. And at the start of a turn, the Hound automatically knows its target's location. If the target was hidden, it is no longer hidden from the Hound. And that actually goes into that darkness. Again, creatures with dark vision can't see it. The Hound, at the start of its turn, always knows its target's location, and the target can't be hidden from it. So, again, depending on how your DM interprets that, bare minimum, it's always going to have quote-unquote line of sight to the target, or at least line of effect. It always knows where the target is. And with the fact that as long as you're within 5 feet of it, it gets advantage on its attack rolls. Even if you're in darkness, advantage and disadvantage could cancel out. It gets flat attack rolls as it's going at this creature, just doing damage. Last is the Hound appears in unoccupied space of your choice within 30 feet of the target. Roll initiative for the Hound. On its turn, it can move only towards its target by the most direct route, and it can use its action only to attack its target. The Hound can make opportunity attacks, but only against its target. Additionally, while the Hound is within 5 feet of the target has disadvantage on saving throws against any spells you cast. The Hound disappears if it is reduced to 0 hit points, if its target is reduced to 0 hit points, or after 5 minutes. So it is a one target only creature. However, if you're fighting something big enough, it's going to take a couple rounds to kill. This can be remarkably useful, especially combining with some of the other abilities that you have, and it only costs you 3 sorcery points. Again, that's the equivalent of a 2nd level spell. And again, with flexible casting, if you don't have enough sorcery points to cast it, you can just transform a spell slot into sorcery points. Now, I should mention, flexible casting does take a bonus action on your turn to do. So combining both of them, because it's a bonus action, would mean you would need to, if you ran out in the middle of combat, you would need to one turn use your bonus action to create your sorcery points. The next turn you could do that. But again, because it's your bonus action to do it, not your action for your first turn might be casting your darkness spell, or might be casting the shadow blade or whatever you're deciding to use. Yeah, not that little limiting, to be honest. When you get to 14th level, you get Shadow Walk. When you are in dim light or darkness, as a bonus action, you can magically teleport up to 120 feet to an unoccupied space that you can see that is also in dim light or darkness. So, this gets even more useful. With your darkness spell that you can see through, you can cast darkness and keep it on you, and then you effectively, because the darkness spell is a 15-foot radius. So effectively, if all you have, like if you're bright light everywhere else but your shadows, you have a 15-foot teleport, because everything within 15 feet of you is in darkness. And you can see, because you can see out to 120 feet. If you're actually in darkness, like you're in a cave or something like that, you can teleport 120 feet as a bonus action. Teleportation abilities are so incredibly useful. It's one of the reasons I love playing Shadow Monk, because they can teleport in dim light or darkness. They can only teleport 60 feet versus 120 for this sorcerer. It also means this sorcerer is hypermobile. Their bonus action can turn into 120 feet of movement. That is massive. In comparison, a fully leveled Shadow Monk can do, without using any key points, can move 60 feet for their regular movement, 60 feet for their Shadow Step bonus action, and then 60 feet for their dash. So they can move 180 feet in a turn, and they are one of the fastest classes in the game. I think 180 feet is the most any class can use without doing something crazy like spells or anything like that. The Sorcerer can move the same amount if they dash, because their movement is 30, their dash would give them another 30 feet, and then they can teleport 120 feet. And again, they can see that far because they're dark vision. So yeah, Shadow Walk turns you to hyper mobile. It makes being a melee sorcerer that much easier, because now you don't even have to worry about getting too close. Again, if you cast darkness on an object that you're holding, again, a dagger, a wand, a stick, anything of your choice, the darkness will move with you. You can teleport wherever you need, stabs someone. They won't be able to see you, so you can actually run away from them without getting opportunity attacks, because they have to be able to see you to get opportunity attacks, and just rinse and repeat. Like, again, this is a really, really powerful subclass if you use everything together. Finally, at 18th level, you get Umbral Form. Starting at 18th level, you can spend 6 sorcery points as a bonus action to magically transform yourself into a shadowy form. In this form, you have resistance to all damage except force and radiant damage, and you can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult to terrain. You take 5 force damage if you end your turn inside an object. You remain in this form for 1 minute. It ends early if you're incapacitated, if you die, or if you dismiss it as a bonus action. 6 sorcery points. That's a lot. It's effectively a 4th level spell slot. So not massive, or 2 second level spell slots, or 3 first level spell slots. But as an 18th level sorcerer, you've got plenty of all of those. You have resistance to all damage except force and radiant, 2 of the more rare damage types in the game. And when you combine that with Shadow Walk and Eyes of the Dark and Strength of the Grave, you are really, really hard to kick a kill. You can teleport wherever you want. Yeah, it's just super amazing. So, final thoughts. This is such a cool subclass, and it allows you to use a lot of spells that a lot of spellcasters will avoid because they require you to be very, very close. Even right from the beginning with Eyes of the Dark, you can get close enough to use touch-based spells without really being afraid. So that can even just start off with Shocking Grasp might be your first attack spell, simply because with Eyes of the Dark, you can go forward and you get advantage on your attack rolls. So you just go bzz, bzz, bzz. And because it's a cantrip, you can just use it over and over and over again. When you get Hound of Ill Omen, you now have a little buddy for when you need a little bit of extra damage. Shadow Walk. Now you can go anywhere you want to get you what you want. Bare minimum, you can use your darkness as a spell to teleport 15 feet, which means you can get out of grapples and restrained and things like that. You can get away from enemies without getting opportunity attacks. You can get through grates and cages and things like that, as long as you can see the other side. Like if there's a solid wall and you can poke a hole in it just wide enough for you to see through, you can teleport to the other side. And then finally, Umbral Form gives you resistance to almost all damage, so you can just rain damage on whomever you want. You don't have to worry about getting close because you're going to be able to soak up a ton of damage on the rare instance that they hit, because a lot of times they're not going to be able to see you. And even if they can see you, you can teleport around and do really, really awesome stuff. So overall, I love the Shadow Sorcerer. I think it's one of the coolest subclasses. I know I keep saying that, but Xanathar just introduced a bunch of super awesome, cool subclasses. It shows. The Divine Soul was really cool because you get to mix Divine and Arcane Magic. The Shadow Magic Sorcerer is really cool because you just get to do awesome stuff. Basically, all the stuff I love about my Shadow Monk is here, and magic. So yeah, super, super cool. Definitely something to have a lot of fun with. Anyway, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, turn notifications on, just to ensure that you don't miss any of this cool stuff. In the comments below, what do you envision a Shadow Sorcerer looking like? Give a physical description of the Shadow Sorcerer you want to make. Are they going to be, wearing all, black and have shadows all over them? Are they going to be, one of those gothic magicians you see in on New York City streets? Like, what would be your coolest way of creating a shadow mage? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right, bye bye.